All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Crusade Against Ignorance. Today I have a new style of video for you, kind of special, new, different thing I'm going to try out. Hopefully you like it. Let me know what you think. It's a little different than what I thought I was going to be doing for these videos, but it might actually work out better. We shall see. So today, as you will know, we are talking about conspiracy theories, the philosophy of conspiracy theories, and just introductory stuff on what they even are. So I've got a little presentation pulled up. So I'm doing this via Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys here. Okay. So today we're talking about what are conspiracy theories. This is a presentation, as you can see, by me, Crusade Against Ignorance. So welcome either back to the channel or for your first time. Hopefully you enjoy the video. So I'm going to be doing a series on the philosophy of conspiracy theories. I figured the best way to start out would be to talk about what they are and how to define them. So as far as topics that are going to be covered in this video, we're going to have just simply defining conspiracy theories, talking a little bit about whether or not they're bad by definition, although that'll be expounded on more in later videos. We're going to talk about why should philosophers even care about conspiracy theories and be talking about them at all. A little bit about a gloss on the weak versus strong definitions, although again, we'll expound on that more later. The contrast between what's called conspiracy theories and then conspiracism, which is a recent distinction in the literature. So again, I'm going to do a whole video on just that, and then epistemic vices and whether or not they contribute to conspiracy theorizing. So some of these things, so the weak versus strong definitions, the are they bad by definition, conspiracism, epistemic vices, a lot of these things I'm going to gloss over here, and then I'm going to talk a lot more about in future videos separately. So I'm going to do a whole video on just the conspiracism versus conspiracy theory definition. I'm going to do a whole video on generalism versus particularism. So there's going to be a lot here that's sort of glossed over that I'm going to expound on in individual chunks. So let's jump into it. What is a conspiracy theory in the first place? Sometimes it's defined pejoratively, so we should kind of go through what it even is. So the term, at least minimally, as I say here, refers to a theory or proposed explanation that features conspiratorial activity among a group of agents as a central or obviously defining ingredient. So this is what we would call a minimal definition or a neutral definition. So here's some examples of popular conspiracy theories. 9/11 was an inside job. John F. Kennedy was assassinated either by the CIA or by a CIA asset or someone working with the CIA. The moon landing was faked by NASA. It was a hoax. We never actually went to the moon. It was just filmed by Stanley Kubrick or somebody. So these are examples of things you'll hear about often. These are often the examples used when people talk about conspiracy theories. And a lot of them are crazy, such as the moon landing one. And then, so I put this here, this is an interesting question. What about, does something like being a flat earther count as a conspiracy theory? Well, that's an interesting question. It kind of will depend on your definition, as we're going to talk about. But the thing is, flat earth may not be directly a conspiracy theory itself, but if you believe in flat earth, you also believe that NASA and plenty of other organizations have suppressed the truth of flat earth for decades, if not longer. So it may not be a conspiracy theory in and of itself, but it's a conspiracy theory adjacent view in the sense that it either entails or is entailed by a conspiracy theory. In the case of flat earth, it more so that belief itself entails conspiracy theories. So we're going to talk a little bit later in epistemic vice videos on more about views that may not be conspiracy theories, but they're conspiracy theory adjacent. So when you think about if you believe in flat earth for whatever reason, that's going to entail you think NASA and the government has lied about this huge thing, which is of course then going to probably entail that you think they lied about a lot of other stuff, especially organizations like NASA, the moon landing. So this is one problem for people who want to always define conspiracy theories neutrally, is there are a lot of views that are examples of epistemic vices that are not themselves conspiracy theories, but they're very, very tightly correlated to conspiracy theories and conspiratorial thinking. So the flat earth one is an interesting kind of thought experiment to get the processes going on kind of what we're thinking about with what's going on with people who believe this stuff and the belief itself. So as I said here, sometimes conspiracy theory is defined pejoratively. So if you look at just the Wikipedia definition or something, it may define them as theories that are intrinsically less likely than other explanations. And so they're often defined as having some sort of epistemic baggage just by definition that makes them less likely. Is this a good idea? Well, again, we're going to talk about that more in future videos when we talk about the generalism, particularism distinction. But for the time being, it's pretty reasonable to say that that's probably not a good idea. And why is it not a good idea to say that they're by definition have some sort of epistemic disadvantage? Well, the fact of the matter is some conspiracy theories, at least defined in this minimal definition above, have turned out to be true. So here's a couple examples I list here. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment, MK Ultra, which was an example of CIA brainwashing experiment, and then Operation Northwoods, which was a proposed plan by the CIA to carry out a false flag operation on American citizens and blame it on Cuba. It never actually happened, but it was a proposed plan by some officials in the government. And then Tuskegee syphilis experiment, MK Ultra, those did actually happen. There's a lot of declassified CIA documents on things that would fit conspiracy theories on this neutral definition that the government's admitted to doing or has turned out to be true. And conspiracy theories aren't always defined by the government. There are conspiracies at levels of high corporations and other planning, perhaps, maybe. So given that there have been examples of conspiracy theories that have turned out to be true, we probably shouldn't just assume that they're false by definition or that they have some sort of epistemic baggage by definition. That doesn't seem like it's going to be a good way to handle the issue. One way, this is another way to get your kind of juices flowing and thinking about how maybe you prefer defining them, is do you think the Watergate counts as a conspiracy theory? I mean, by this minimal definition, Richard Nixon and the people who are closely involved with him were conspiring to carry out a certain, actions, and there was a proposed explanation of events that invoked a conspiracy among these elites, and it was true. So on more minimal definitions of conspiracy theories, that counts, but on people who want to kind of more so denounce them just by definition, they would not necessarily call that a conspiracy theory, they'd fit it into something else. So whether or not you think something like Watergate counts as a conspiracy theory, that might get you to kind of figure out exactly where you fit on this weak versus strong definitions, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Now, this is an interesting issue. I'm obviously mostly concerned with philosophy. There are sociologists and psychologists that have worked a lot on conspiracy theories, but why should philosophers in particular care? Well, as anybody who's kind of generally familiar with philosophy knows, philosophers are concerned with knowledge. It's one of the four or five main branches of philosophy is epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. So obviously explanations and theories of events have to do with knowledge and beliefs. So philosophers are concerned with that just by definition of the field that it's part of. But there's a kind of a broader, or I guess actually not broader, a more specific field called social epistemology, which deals with knowledge and beliefs more so in groups and in social systems and how that works and how those beliefs are cultivated, incubated, and so on and so forth. So in terms of the field of social epistemology, how knowledge functions in groups, this is conspiracy theories fall directly under that umbrella of social epistemology. So philosophers concerned with epistemology and particularly the social elements of knowledge are going to be very interested in how, whether or not conspiracy theories can count as knowledge claims and what justifies them. Knowledge and justification is a big theme in just epistemology in general. Obviously for science, some conspiracy theories run against scientific consensus. So people concerned or wondering about the state of science, scientific realism, or how much to trust expert opinion, experiment, things like that. So it's directly sort of related to how we deal with science and how science is viewed by the public and what people think about science, scientific community, things like that. There are some follow-throughs and there is some follow-through in the field of ethics as well. Obviously for public philosophy, philosophers should be involved in the polis in the city-state in terms of making their work and kind of the knowledge about this accessible, which I think is something philosophers are not always good at. Academia tends to be sort of elitist sometimes, so that's part of why I'm doing things like this. I think doing philosophy publicly, making information very accessible, and sort of talking about these things that affect people in broader social systems is important. So philosophers should obviously care about making sure they help steer societies towards correct beliefs, or at least critical thinking, if nothing else. And then obviously there are ramifications for politics, political philosophy, and just general sociology, the social good. If conspiracy theories are true and if they're false, they're going to be doing a lot of damage to social systems when they spread a lot. And we see this happening. Moorhead and Rosenblum, 2019, their book, a lot of people are saying The New Conspiracism and the Assault on Democracy. They talk about how the rise of movements like QAnon is very damaging to American political life in the sense that it undermines democracy and faith in traditional knowledge-producing institutions, and how that's damaging for the general social well-being and for well-functioning political systems. So we'll talk a lot more about that particular point in the video on conspiracism. But here's just a gloss of a few of the things related to philosophy, and so why philosophers should definitely care about this. So as I've alluded to a couple times, there are minimal and neutral definitions of conspiracy theories that are also more pejorative definitions. So again, it's kind of up to you to decide how you want to define them. most philosophers who work in conspiracy theories are people who want to opt for minimal definitions. And so like the one I gave at the beginning, where conspiracy theories are defined pretty minimally, and they are technically by definition open to being just as true as any other theory. One of the biggest defenders of this kind of particularist view is Dentith. And he says, so the necessary ingredients for something to count as a conspiracy theory, there are only three. So you have to have a group of conspirators, secrecy, and shared goals. So this definition is rather minimal. There are a lot of things that would count as conspiracies on this definition, but that are very far removed from, say, like the 9/11 and the reptilians and Illuminati and all that, that crazy stuff that we generally think of when we think conspiracy theories on Dentith's definition. There's a lot of things that are lesser than that would count. So this is a very minimal definition, perhaps even more so than the one given at the outset of the video. David Cody defines conspiracy theories just as explanations that are opposed to the official explanation of event at a given time. And while that I think is helpful for helping us think about this, Dentith and others have criticized that definition. So if you take, for example, the 9/11 events, the official explanation of the story is a conspiracy theory on Dentith's definition. I mean, it involved a group of conspirators, Al-Qaeda, secrecy, they obviously didn't tell the United States about it, and shared goals, which was to strike a blow against American imperialism or American national pride or whatever. So on Dentith's definition, that counts as a conspiracy theory. So the problem with Cody's definition is official explanations can themselves be conspiracies sometimes. And that is if we accept kind of a definition similar to Dentith's. But if we just take Cody's definition, then there are things that will involve conspiring that will not count as conspiracy theories, which that seems counterintuitive. But these are two ways, two minimalistic definitions, and we'll talk more about some more pejorative ones in later content. But this is a good way to get started thinking about, in what ways are these definitions compatible, incompatible. I've already given sort of a gloss, and then what definitions are you as you think about these and what I've said so far. How would you define conspiracy theories? Would you define them differently than either of these guys, or would you maybe accept both, and with the kind of the sort of the asterisk on Cody's that sometimes there can be conspiracies that are the official explanation. So it's kind of get to thinking about how you want to define conspiracy theories, how you think they should be defined. So that is the majority of the content. What are conspiracy theories? Well, the short answer is philosophers disagree about this, but generally they want to define them minimally. So I think a good place to start is the definition I gave at the beginning. So at least minimally, the term refers to a theory or proposed explanation that features conspiratorial activity among a group of agents as a central or defining ingredient, not necessarily the only ingredient. And we'll look maybe in future stuff on some reasons to doubt such minimalistic definitions, but most philosophers accept minimal definitions like that. They think conspiracy theories should be defined minimally so that we don't put them at an epistemic disadvantage just at the outset, by definition. That seems to be wrong, for reasons I gave earlier. There are counterexamples that have turned out to be true. So what are conspiracy theories? They're that definition with, kind of the aside that philosophers do disagree about this. There is a little bit of leeway and discussion to be had. There is a spectrum on which conspiracy theories are defined, but hopefully this has given you sort of an introduction to thinking about them. So what are we going to talk about in the rest of this series? We're going to talk about what Muirhead and Rosenblum call classic conspiracy theories versus conspiracism, which is what they call conspiracy without the theory. We're going to talk about epistemic virtues and vices, particularly the work of one generalist philosopher who argues that conspiracy theories are usually, if not always, the result of some epistemic vice, of some bad handling of evidence, or just some general critical thinking malfunction. We're going to talk about, probably the second video in the series will probably be the generalism versus particularism distinction. So philosophers fit into two broad camps when they think about conspiracy theories: the generalists who think they're generally bad, particularists who think we have to evaluate them case by case. That's the basic gloss. We'll do a whole video on that distinction. We're going to talk a bit more about different types of conspiracy theories, because there are different types. And then we're going to talk about some essays from this book, including one called Aren't We All Conspiracy Theorists? And yeah, so that's just a little bit. I don't know how many videos the series on conspiracy theories is going to end up being, but it'll probably be a good few. As I say here, as always, subscribe for more free philosophy content if you want it. I am hoping to, sorry, let me end I don't know if I can end my screen sharing here. Oh, whoop. Yeah, I know how to use Zoom. Anyways, yeah, so as I said, if you enjoy free philosophy content and you find these types of videos helpful, subscribe, that'd be great. Like the video. Let me know what you think of this style of video. I thought about also doing more of like lecture style with me and like a whiteboards. I don't know if that would be preferred, or if this kind of having a presentation with me talking over it is a better model. So let me know what you think of this kind of structure of video, as well as maybe some things you'd like to see covered in this series beyond what I've sort of alluded to so far. But I hope you found this helpful, and I hope to see you in the next videos. Comment, let me know any comments, concerns, gripes, complaints, etc., and I will see you next time.